Boston drowned in heat. The kind of thick, suffocating July heat that pressed against windows and turned asphalt into a shimmering mirage. The 32nd floor of Sterling Tech was a ghost town, every office dark, every desk abandoned. Daniel Harper, head of product analytics, single father, widower, was the last one packing up when he saw her through the frosted glass walls of the corner office. Evelyn Sterling, CEO, shoulders shaking, tears cutting lines down her pale cheeks. She looked up. Their eyes met. 3 seconds of silence. Then she stood, opened the door, and said 2 words. "Help me." Daniel didn't move. He stood there with his laptop bag half-zipped, one hand frozen on the strap, staring at the woman who ran a 9-figure tech company and had never once, in 3 years, spoken to him beyond the clipped formalities of quarterly reviews and hallway nods. Evelyn Sterling didn't cry. She didn't break. She didn't ask for help. She fired people via email at 6 in the morning and closed 9-figure deals before lunch. She'd once told a venture capitalist to leave her building because he interrupted her twice. She'd restructured an entire division during a board call without raising her voice, and now she was standing in the doorway of her corner office, mascara ruined, hands trembling behind her back, asking a product analytics lead she'd spoken to exactly 11 times for help. Daniel set down his bag slowly. "What do you need?" Evelyn stepped aside to let him in. The office smelled like bergamot, and the heavy, humid air leaking through a window cracked 2 inches against the heat. Her hair had come loose from its usual low bun. Strands stuck to her damp face. "There's a wedding tonight," she said. Her voice was controlled, but barely. The syllables had that careful precision of someone holding themselves together by willpower alone. "My cousin's wedding. At the Fairmont Copley Plaza." She paused, studying him. "I need you to come with me. As my date, as my boyfriend. Someone who looks like he's been with me for 3 months. Daniel blinked. She continued before he could respond, reciting the backstory she'd constructed with clinical precision. "We met at a board dinner, October 15th. No, 9 Park. You made a comment about the wine pairing. I corrected you. You didn't get defensive. I found that refreshing. We've kept it private. You have a daughter, Grace, 8 years old. I've met her twice. She likes me but isn't sure yet." "That's realistic," Daniel said carefully. "Children are perceptive. They don't trust easily. Neither do you." Evelyn's jaw tightened, but she didn't deny it. Daniel studied her, the red eyes, the trembling hand she kept hiding behind her back, the way she was holding herself together with nothing but sheer will, and the armor of a woman who'd spent her entire adult life refusing to appear weak. "Why me?" he asked. "You could have hired someone. An actor, a professional." "I don't trust actors," she said flatly. "I needed someone who wouldn't perform. Someone who'd react like a real person. Someone who's loved someone." The words landed harder than she'd intended. Daniel felt them settle in his chest, right next to the place where Sarah's memory lived, warm and aching and permanent. "I saw your file," Evelyn continued. "After Sarah passed, you took 3 months off, came back part-time, rearranged your entire schedule around Grace, turned down a promotion because it required travel. You know what it's like, to put someone else first. And you don't make it look like a performance." "Widowed," Daniel said quietly. 4 years ago, Evelyn's expression softened, just a fraction, just enough for him to see something human beneath the control. "I'm sorry." She nodded slowly. "Then you understand." "Understand what?" "Why I can't go alone." Outside, the city sweltered. Daniel thought about Grace, tucked into a sleeping bag at her friend Madison's house, probably giggling over cartoons, safe and happy. He thought about his empty apartment, the leftover pasta in the fridge, the silence that pressed against the walls when Grace wasn't there to fill them. "One condition," he said. "What?" "After tonight, you tell me the truth about what I saw, about why you were crying, about why you're really doing this." Evelyn studied him for a long moment, her green eyes searching his face for something she wasn't sure she'd find. Then she extended her hand. Deal. Her palm was ice cold. The suit arrived at Daniel's apartment 40 minutes later. Charcoal gray, Italian wool. Tom Ford label. It fit like it had been made for him. And when he checked the delivery receipt, he understood why. Rush, tailoring. 3 measurements taken from his employee file photo. The realization hit him slowly, then all at once. Evelyn had planned this. Not an hour ago. Not after she'd broken down in her office. She had planned this days in advance. She'd chosen him, watched him, measured him without his knowledge, had a suit cut to his proportions and held in reserve. She'd studied his movements, his patterns, his schedule. She knew when Grace had sleepovers. She knew when he stayed late. She knew he'd be on the 32nd floor tonight. The question wasn't why she'd asked him. The question was how long she'd been watching. Daniel stared at himself in the mirror. The last time he'd worn something this expensive was his wedding. Sarah had loved navy blue. He'd worn a navy suit and she'd cried when she saw him at the end of the aisle. And he'd cried too. And his mother had taken a photograph that still sat on Grace's nightstand. He pushed the thought away, adjusted the silk tie, and headed downstairs. The Mercedes idled at the curb, hazard lights blinking through the thick summer air. Heat radiated off the hood in visible waves. The driver opened the rear door without a word. Evelyn sat inside, transformed. Gone was the smudged mascara, and the loose hair, and the vulnerability. She was composed, luminous, her presence filling the back seat with a quiet, magnetic authority that hadn't been there an hour ago. Daniel Sludenbeside here. You clean up well, she said. So do you. The car pulled into traffic. The streets shimmered with heat. Pedestrians moving slowly, wilting under the humidity. Boston in July was an endurance test. And tonight, the city was losing. Ground rules, Evelyn said without looking at him. She recited the backstory again with more details. Specific dates, restaurants, a fabricated argument about vacation planning they'd resolved over Thai food. Then she stopped. Her composure shifted. Something raw flickered beneath the surface. There's something else you need to know. My ex-fiancé will be there tonight. Nathaniel Cross. We were engaged for 8 months. He wanted me to scale back at work. Said I was choosing the company over us. She paused. He wasn't wrong. He married someone else 6 months ago. My cousin Claire. The one getting married tonight is my other cousin. But Nathaniel and Claire will be there. Front row. Daniel exhaled slowly. Great. And there's my mother. Evelyn's voice tightened like a wire about to snap. My mother has never approved of anyone I've brought to a family event. She finds reasons, excuses. But tonight will be different for her. Her gaze met his directly, and he saw the warning in her eyes before she spoke the words. My mother will see your skin before she sees you, Evelyn said quietly. I need you to know that. The words hung in the humid air, between them like something physical, something with weight and history. Daniel was quiet for a long time. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. The first flickers of lightning illuminated the skyline. A summer storm was building, rolling in off the harbor like a slow-moving wall of dark cloud. The air pressure dropped. The city held its breath. I've been black my whole life, Evelyn, Daniel said finally. His voice was calm, measured, carrying the weight of 39 years of navigating rooms that weren't built for him. I know exactly what that looks like. Evelyn held his gaze. Then she nodded. Slowly, deliberately, as if she'd found the answer she was looking for. The storm broke overhead. Rain hammered the windshield. Lightning split the sky above the financial district. The driver turned on the wipers and kept driving through streets that were quickly emptying. The Fairmont Copley Plaza lobby was a cathedral of marble and gold. Crystal chandeliers the size of compact cars hung from vaulted ceilings painted with Renaissance-inspired murals. Persian rugs thick enough to swallow footsteps covered the floors. A string quartet played Vivaldi near the curved staircase, and waiters in white gloves glided through the crowd with champagne flutes, balanced on silver trays. It was a different world. Daniel's world was Grace's Saturday morning soccer games in Dorchester, grocery store sushi eaten standing at the kitchen counter, and trying to fix the washing machine with YouTube tutorials at midnight. This was wealth that didn't announce itself. It simply existed, unquestioned and absolute, like gravity. Evelyn's hand slipped into his. Her palm was still cold despite the heat outside, and he felt the faint tremor in her fingers that she was fighting to conceal. "Smile," she murmured. "My mother's watching." Daniel followed her gaze across the ballroom. Margaret Sterling stood near the grand staircase, draped in cream silk and pearls. She was 70, but looked 55. The product of excellent genetics, and the kind of maintenance that cost more per year than most people's mortgages. Her posture was military straight, her eyes pale blue and calculating, and they locked onto Daniel the moment he entered the room. She approached slowly, deliberately, each step measured, controlled, the approach of a woman who had never in her life rushed toward anything or anyone. Evelyn. No warmth, no embrace. Just acknowledgement, like checking a box on a list. Then her gaze shifted to Daniel, and he watched her eyes do the thing he'd seen 1,000 times in his life. The quick sweep, head to toe, the cataloging of skin tone, bone structure, the suit that didn't quite erase what she was really looking at. "And you must be Daniel." "Mrs. Sterling." He extended his hand. She took it with 2 fingers, held it for exactly 1 second, then released it the way someone sets down something they aren't sure about. "Yale, I'm told," she said. "Yes, ma'am, class of 2009. Her chin lifted almost imperceptibly. "And your family? Where are they from?" "Pittsburgh," Daniel said. His voice was steady, practiced at this particular dance. "My father was a union electrician. My mother taught elementary school." Margaret's expression didn't change, but the pause before she spoke lasted 1 beat too long. The kind of pause Daniel had learned to read by the time he was 12 years old. "How grounded," she said. The word was a door closing. Evelyn's grip on Daniel's hand tightened painfully. "And you work for my daughter?" "With her," Daniel corrected gently. "I lead the product analytics team." "How convenient." "Mother," Evelyn started. "I'm simply curious, darling. You've never brought anyone to a family event. Forgive me for wanting to understand. Who's captured your attention?" Margaret smiled, with her mouth only. Her pale blue eyes remained exactly as they were, cold, assessing. They moved into the ballroom, and Daniel felt the gazes tracking him like heat. Some curious, some confused, some carrying that particular polite hostility he'd navigated his entire life, in predominantly white spaces. An older gentleman in a linen suit near the bar shook Daniel's hand, made small talk about the Red Sox, laughed at a joke Daniel made about the bullpen, and then turned away and discreetly wiped his palm against his pocket square. The motion was quick, practiced, automatic, the kind of thing a person did without thinking about what it communicated. Daniel saw it. Evelyn saw it too. Her jaw tightened. She squeezed his hand harder, but said nothing. They kept walking through the ballroom, through the sea of pale faces and old money and unspoken rules. And Daniel moved the way he'd always moved through rooms like this his entire life. Steady, present, refusing to be invisible, refusing to shrink. A voice cut through the crowd, warm and genuine, and Daniel felt Evelyn's hand relax for the first time all evening. "Evie." William Sterling moved toward them with long, easy strides, his expression open and unguarded in a way that seemed impossible in this family. Evelyn's brother was tall, thin, and carried himself with the relaxed confidence of someone who'd chosen academia over the family empire and never regretted it. He pulled Evelyn into a hug that was real and solid, the kind that said, "I know what tonight costs you," without needing words. Then he turned to Daniel and shook his hand with both of his. A real handshake. Firm, honest. The first one Daniel had received since walking through those doors. "You're the mystery man," William said, grinning. "Finally. William Sterling, the disappointing sibling. He's a professor at Harvard," Evelyn said, and Daniel caught the fondness in her voice. "Constitutional law," William said cheerfully, "which pays nothing and impresses no one at these events. But at least I'm not the one running a tech empire and dating an employee." He pointed at Evelyn. "You're definitely the rebel now." William looked at Daniel with open warmth, and Daniel understood that this man had already decided to accept him, not because of his resume or his suit, because Evelyn had brought him, and that was enough. Survive tonight, and you're officially family, William said. In the most horrifying sense, he squeezed Evelyn's shoulder, leaned close, and whispered something that made her almost smile. Then he walked away, snagging a champagne flute from a passing waiter, moving through the room with the ease of a man who'd stopped trying to impress this family years ago. Daniel watched him go. I like him, he said quietly. Everyone does, Evelyn replied. He's the easy one. He's also the only person in this family who calls me just to ask if I've eaten. Then the air changed. Daniel felt it before he saw the man approaching. A subtle shift in Evelyn's posture, a stiffening of her spine, a controlled exhale that was trying not to be a sharp breath. Evelyn, you look stunning. The voice was smooth, confident, and it made Evelyn's entire body go rigid. Nathaniel Cross was objectively perfect. Tailored tuxedo, sharp jawline, dark hair graying at the temples in that distinguished way men were allowed to age into while women were expected to fight against. His smile was polished, practiced, the kind that closed deals and ended relationships with equal efficiency. It's been a while, he said. 6 months, she replied. Her voice was controlled, too controlled. Has it? Nathaniel tilted his head. Feels longer. His gaze shifted to Daniel, and there it was, the assessment. Quick, practiced, layered. Not just measuring Daniel's suit or his handshake, but cataloging something deeper, something about the shade of his skin and what it meant in this room, in this family. The look lasted barely a second, but Daniel had spent a lifetime reading moments exactly like that. And you are? Daniel Harper. They shook hands. Nathaniel's grip was firm, competitive. How do you know Evelyn? We're dating. Nathaniel's eyebrows rose just a fraction. Are you? How unexpected. He paused. Dating your employee? How modern. With her, Daniel corrected. Nathaniel's smile sharpened. He looked at Evelyn. I'm happy for you. Truly. Then he leaned closer and dropped his voice. Take care of her. She's fragile, even if she won't admit it. He walked away, and the air he left behind smelled like expensive cologne and old wounds. Evelyn stood perfectly still. Too still. I need air, she said. Then she turned and walked toward the terrace doors, fast, precise, like she was fleeing a fire. Daniel followed. The terrace was empty. The summer storm had arrived in full force. Rain hammered the stone balustrades and pooled between flagstones. Thunder rolled across the harbor in deep, resonant waves. The air was thick and electric, saturated with ozone. Lightning flickered over the waterfront in brief white flashes. Evelyn gripped the iron railing with both hands. Her hair was getting soaked. She didn't seem to notice. He's wrong, Daniel said quietly, stepping up beside her. About what? You're not fragile. Evelyn laughed, bitter and sharp. You don't know me. I know you built a company from nothing. I know you've survived rooms full of men who wanted you to fail. I know you don't cry in front of people. Except tonight. She turned to face him. Rain ran down her cheeks, mixing with what might have been tears. Do you know why I asked you to come tonight? Tell me. Because Nathaniel was right about one thing. I don't know how to let people in. I don't know how to be soft. I don't know how to be anything other than this. She gestured at herself. Controlled. Competent. Cold. You're not cold. Yes, I am. Then why are you shaking? Evelyn looked down at her hands on the railing. They were trembling. I used to think strength meant not needing anyone, she said quietly. That if I could just be smart enough, work hard enough, prove myself enough, I wouldn't have to ask for help. I wouldn't have to depend on anyone. And now I'm standing on a terrace in a thunderstorm with a man I barely know, pretending we're in love, because I'm too scared to walk into that room alone. You're not alone? Daniel said. Yes, I am. No, you're not. He stepped closer, close enough to see the rain catching in her hair, close enough to see the exhaustion carved into her face. I lost my wife 4 years ago, he said quietly. Car accident, black ice, on Route 9. She was coming home from a conference in Worcester. I got the call at 2 a.m. Grace was 4. Evelyn's expression softened. For a year, I was a ghost, Daniel continued. I went through the motions, fed Grace, helped her brush her teeth, read her bedtime stories, but I wasn't there. Not really. I was just surviving. What changed? Grace asked me if I was sad because of her. Evelyn's breath caught. She thought I was distant because she'd done something wrong. Because she wasn't enough. His voice cracked on the last word, and I realized I'd been so focused on protecting myself from the pain that I'd forgotten how to be present. How did you fix it? I stopped pretending I was fine. I let her see me cry. I let her ask questions I didn't have answers to. I let her be scared, and I was scared with her. And slowly, we found our way back. Evelyn was quiet for a long time. Rain soaked through Daniel's suit jacket, but neither of them moved. Then, softly, almost inaudibly over the storm, she spoke. I haven't cried in front of someone since I was 12. What happened when you were 12? My father died. Heart attack. I found him in his study. Her voice went flat, detached, the way people talk about the thing that broke them when they've spent decades building walls around it. My mother told me crying wouldn't bring him back, that I needed to be strong for William. So I was 12 years old, and I was strong. And then the tears came. Not delicate, not controlled. Real tears, the kind that shook her whole body, that came from somewhere so deep she'd forgotten it existed. Daniel pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his shoulder, and he held her while the warm summer rain fell around them, relentless and cleansing. Inside, through the glass doors, the string quartet began playing Pachelbel's canon. The wedding ceremony was starting. Neither of them moved. Eventually, Evelyn pulled back. Her face was streaked with mascara and rain. She wiped at her cheeks with the back of her hand, a gesture so unpolished, so unguarded, that Daniel thought she'd never looked more real. They went back inside. The ceremony had begun. They found seats at the back and watched in silence, Evelyn's hand gripping his under the table. Her fingers intertwined with his like they'd always belonged that way. During the reception, while guests swirled around the dance floor, and champagne flowed like water, and the band played something slow and golden, Nathaniel appeared at Daniel's elbow like a man who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Mind if I borrow him for a moment? His tone was friendly. Too friendly. Evelyn's grip on Daniel's hand tightened. It's fine, Daniel said quietly. He looked at Evelyn. I'll be right back. She wanted to protest. He could see it in the set of her jaw, the way her fingers didn't want to release his. But she nodded. Nathaniel led Daniel toward the far end of the bar, away from the crowd, into the dim corridor near the coat check, where the noise of the party faded to a murmur, and the lighting turned the air amber. Scotch? Nathaniel offered, already signaling the bartender. I'm good. Suit yourself. Nathaniel ordered a double, took a long sip, set the glass down carefully, and turned to face Daniel fully. The friendly mask was gone now, stripped away like a costume after a performance. Let me be honest with you, he said. His voice was low, measured, the voice of a man accustomed to delivering verdicts. I cared about Evelyn, genuinely, but she can't love, not the way a person needs to be loved. She can't put another human being before the company. It's not in her wiring. When it matters, when there's a choice between you and Sterling Tech, she'll choose the company. Every single time. Maybe she just didn't choose you, Daniel said. Nathaniel's smile faded. Then it came back, thinner, sharper, and between us, he leaned closer. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Her mother will never accept this. You know why. This family, this world, it's not built for someone like you. The words hung there, naked, deliberate, carrying the weight of centuries of history that no amount of progress had fully erased. You're a novelty tonight, Nathaniel continued. The interesting choice, the bold statement. But tomorrow, you're a liability, a complication. Something they'll discuss over brunch and pretend to be progressive about, while privately hoping it goes away. Daniel felt the words land, one by one, in the place where every slight, every microaggression, every polite smile that masked something uglier had collected over 39 years of being a black man in America. He didn't raise his voice, didn't clench his fist. He looked Nathaniel in the eye and held the gaze until the other man shifted his weight. I've spent my whole life being underestimated by men who look like you, Daniel said. I've walked into boardrooms where I was the only person who looked like me. I've had my credentials questioned before I could finish introducing myself. I've been followed in stores and pulled over on highways and smiled at by people who were afraid of me. And I'm still here because none of that, not a single moment of it, has ever defined what I'm worth. Nathaniel stared at him. For the first time all night, the polished mask slipped, and underneath was something small. Daniel turned and walked back to the ballroom. Evelyn was standing near their table, watching the corridor, her body angled toward him like a compass finding north. She read the tension in his shoulders immediately. What did he say? Daniel looked at her. He said, "You can't love that. You'll always choose work over everything else." Evelyn flinched. And that your world isn't built for someone like me. The color drained from Evelyn's face. Before she could respond, Nathaniel was back. He approached Evelyn directly this time, his expression shifting from predatory to something almost earnest, almost kind, which made it worse because kindness from Nathaniel Cross always came with conditions. "I have an offer for you," he said. "I'm not interested. You haven't heard it yet. I don't need to." "Crossbridge Consulting is opening a tech advisory division," Nathaniel said, as if she hadn't spoken. "We want someone who understands the industry from the inside. Someone brilliant. Someone with your reputation, your track record." He straightened his cuffs. "I want you to run it. Partnership, equity, full autonomy, better hours, better work-life balance." He paused, let the words land like a closing argument. "You could actually have a life, Evelyn." She stared at him. "A life. You're 38 years old," Nathaniel said, and his voice turned gentle in a way that was worse than cruelty, because it sounded like it came from genuine concern. "You run a company that demands 80-hour weeks. You don't have hobbies. You don't have friends outside of work. You barely see your family. And now you're dating an employee because he's convenient." Each sentence landed like a bullet, because every single one of them was true. Not approximately true, not partially true, true in the way that only someone who'd been close enough to see the machinery of your life could articulate. "When was the last time you took a vacation?" Nathaniel continued. "When was the last time you woke up and didn't immediately check your email? When was the last time you chose yourself over sterling tech?" The silence stretched. Guests at nearby tables had stopped pretending not to listen. Daniel watched Evelyn's face, watched the way each question hit her, the way she absorbed the impact without flinching, the way her jaw set a little tighter with each truth she couldn't deny. He wanted to step in, to say something, but this was her fight, her moment, and she needed to own it. Then, something shifted, a settling. A decision made somewhere deep behind her green eyes, in the place where the 12-year-old girl who'd stopped crying had lived ever since. "No," she said. "Evelyn." I said no. She took a breath. Slow, deliberate, because I'm not looking for a way out. I'm looking for a way through. Nathaniel frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm tired of people telling me I have to choose. Work or life, success or love, control or vulnerability." Her voice was steady now, certain in a way it hadn't been all night. "I don't want balance. I want integration. I want a life where I can be ambitious and soft, driven and present, successful and human. That's not realistic. Maybe not, but it's what I want." Nathaniel shook his head slowly. "You're chasing an impossible standard." "Then I'll fail," Evelyn said. "But at least I'll fail trying to be whole, not trying to be half of myself." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a finality that even Nathaniel couldn't argue with. "I spent 26 years building walls because a 12-year-old girl was told that crying was weakness. I'm not going to spend the next 26 running from the things that make me human. Not for you, not for my mother, not for anyone." She looked at him, really looked at him. The man she'd almost married. The man who'd told her she couldn't love. The man who'd married her cousin, and then stood here offering her an exit strategy wrapped in concern. And she felt nothing. Not anger, not pain, not loss. Just clarity. The kind that comes after a storm breaks. "You should go," she said quietly. He stood there a moment longer, searching her face for doubt, for hesitation. He didn't find any. "I already did," he said. Then he walked away. The room had gone quiet around them. Not silent, but that particular, charged quiet that happens when people are pretending not to listen while hanging on every word. Evelyn felt the eyes on her, felt the weight of the room, the judgment, the curiosity, the barely concealed whispers behind champagne flutes and polite smiles. She turned to Daniel. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Patient, steady, present, the way he'd been all night. The way she was beginning to understand he always was. She thought about Nathaniel's words, "She can't love." She thought about her mother's pale blue eyes cataloging Daniel's skin color before his character. She thought about the older man at the bar who'd wiped his hand after shaking Daniel's. The quick, practiced ease of the motion, as if it were nothing, as if it were natural, as if Daniel's skin had left something on his palm that needed removing. She thought about the corridor, about Nathaniel leaning close to Daniel and telling him this world wasn't built for someone like him. And she thought about the terrace, about Daniel's arms around her in the rain, about the first honest moment she'd had in years, about a man who'd walked into a room that wasn't built for him and refused to shrink. "I choose myself," she said. She didn't whisper it, didn't mumble it, said it clearly, firmly, loud enough for the tables around them to hear, loud enough for the room to stop pretending it wasn't listening. Not the version of me that makes other people comfortable. Not the version that's easy to understand. Not the version that works 80 hours a week and never asks for help and pretends that control is the same thing as strength. The real one. The messy, complicated, imperfect one. The one who cried on a terrace tonight and didn't fall apart. The one who's terrified and standing here anyway. Margaret Sterling stood near the head table, champagne flute frozen halfway to her lips. Evelyn looked directly at her mother. Her voice didn't waver. "And I choose who I want beside me, not because of his last name, not because of his net worth, not because of the color of his skin, because he showed up when no one else did, because when I was breaking, he didn't try to fix me or manage me or leverage my vulnerability. He just held me, and that is worth more than every name and every dollar and every expectation in this room." The ballroom went still. A champagne glass clinked somewhere in the silence. Then William started clapping. Slow, deliberate, standing near the wall with his jacket off and his tie loosened, clapping for his sister like she'd just won something that couldn't be measured. A few others joined, tentative at first, then building, until a scattered wave of applause moved through the room like something alive. Margaret's expression didn't change. She stood at the head table, frozen, and Daniel watched something pass behind her pale blue eyes. Not acceptance, not yet, but the first tremor of recognition that her daughter had become someone she couldn't control. Nathaniel was already gone. Evelyn turned to Daniel and took his hand. "Let's get out of here," she said. Daniel smiled. "What about the wedding? They'll survive without me. Your mother? She'll get over it." She squeezed his hand. "I've never been more sure of anything." They walked out together. Through the lobby, past the chandeliers and the Persian rugs and the world that had never quite fit, through the revolving doors and into the summer night. The storm had passed. The rain had stopped. The air was clean and cool for the first time all day, washed new by the downpour, carrying the scent of wet pavement and river water. The city glistened. Streetlights reflected off wet sidewalks like scattered gold. They stood under the portico, breathing it in, and everything felt possible. The Mercedes pulled up. They climbed inside, and the city slid past. Wet streets, dark windows, the occasional late-night pedestrian hurrying through puddles. Boston had been beaten quiet by the storm, and now it was recovering, steaming gently in the aftermath, the way cities do after summer rain. "Where to?" the driver asked. "The Esplanade," Evelyn said quietly. "Charles River." They drove in silence, not uncomfortable silence, the kind that doesn't need filling, the kind that exists between people who've already said the hard things and don't need to prove anything with words. Daniel watched the city pass through Rain Street glass. He thought about what Nathaniel had said at the bar. This world isn't built for someone like you. And he thought about the way Evelyn had stood up in that ballroom and dismantled every wall she'd ever built, brick by brick, in front of the people who'd taught her to build them in the first place. The car stopped along the esplanade. They stepped out into the night. The Charles River stretched before them, dark and glassy, reflecting the city lights like a second sky laid flat on the water. The air was cool and damp after the storm, heavy with the smell of wet grass and river mud, and the particular freshness that only comes after summer rain has scrubbed the world clean. Crickets sang in the darkness. Somewhere across the water, a car horn echoed faintly. Then silence returned. "Why here?" Daniel asked. "My father used to bring me here," Evelyn said quietly. "Sunday mornings. Just the two of us. We'd walk along the river and he'd tell me about his dreams, about the company he wanted to build, the legacy he wanted to leave." She stared out at the water, and her voice softened into something young, something she'd kept locked away for 26 years. "He told me I could do anything, be anything, as long as I never stopped moving forward." She paused. "So I didn't. I never stopped. Not when he died. Not when my engagement fell apart. Not when the loneliness got so heavy I couldn't breathe. I just kept running, but I forgot to stop and ask myself why, or where I was going. I just ran. And now I'm tired," she whispered. "I'm so tired of running." Daniel reached out and brushed a strand of damp hair from her face. His thumb grazed her cheek, and she didn't pull away. "Then stop," he said softly. "Just for tonight. Stop running. Stop proving. Stop being perfect. What if I don't know how to be anything else? Then we'll figure it out. Together." Evelyn stared at him, searching his face in the dim light reflected off the river, looking for the lie, the catch. The moment he'd step back, she didn't find it. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Because I see you," Daniel said. "The real you. And I like her. You don't even know her. I know enough." Her walls crumbled. She leaned forward and kissed him, not tentative this time, not careful, real. His hands found her waist. Her fingers gripped the lapels of his jacket. And for a moment, the city disappeared. The river, the lights, the lingering humidity, the weight of everything that had happened tonight. There was just this, just them, just the truth of two people choosing to be seen. When they pulled apart, Evelyn's voice was barely audible over the crickets. "I don't want to pretend this didn't happen. Neither do I. I don't know where this goes. Me neither." She laughed, soft and broken and real. "Come home with me," she said. Daniel searched her face. "You sure?" "No. But I'm doing it anyway." They told the driver the address, and the car pulled back into the summer night. The penthouse was exactly what Daniel expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Minimalist furniture, sharp lines, neutral colors. Nothing out of place. Nothing personal. Art on the walls that probably cost more than his annual salary. Everything curated, everything controlled, everything empty. Evelyn kicked off her shoes the moment the door closed. She looked smaller without them, more real. "Water?" she asked. "Please." She disappeared into the kitchen. Daniel wandered toward the windows. The city sprawled below, dark except for scattered lights and the sheen of wet streets catching moonlight. Boston was resting, recovering, starting over the way it always did after a storm. Evelyn returned with 2 glasses. They stood side by side, looking out at the night. "This is where you live," Daniel said. She set down her glass. "I bought it 5 years ago. After the engagement ended, I wanted something that was mine. Something no one could touch. Something I controlled completely." She paused. "But it's just space. I work. I sleep. I leave. There's nothing here that makes it home." They moved to the couch, sat close. Her head found his shoulder like it had always belonged there. "Tell me about Grace," Evelyn said softly. Daniel smiled. The kind of smile that only fathers give when they talk about the person who saved their life. "She's fierce, smart, funny. She asked me last week if women can be president. And when I said yes," she announced, "she's running in 2048. Evelyn laughed. A real laugh. "She sounds incredible," She is. He paused. She'd like you. How do you know? Because you're not fake. Kids can smell fake from a mile away. Evelyn was quiet for a moment. I'd like to meet her, she said. For real? Yeah? Yeah. Daniel kissed the top of her head. She'll have questions. I know. She'll test you. Good. She might not like you at first. That's okay. I don't like me most of the time. We'll figure it out. They sat in comfortable silence. The city hummed below. Then Evelyn spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. Stay. Tonight. Tomorrow. As long as you want. Daniel pulled her closer. I'm staying. She closed her eyes. Good. Morning came slowly. Summer dawn, pale golden pink, filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The harbor glittered. The sky was clear, washed clean by the storm, bluer than it had been in weeks. Daniel woke first. He made coffee. When he came back, she was awake, sitting by the window, watching the city come alive. Morning, he said, handing her a mug. Morning. They sat side by side, watching Boston wake up under a clean summer sky. Joggers appeared along the esplanade. A ferry cut across the harbor. The city stretched out before them, bright and new. What happens now? Evelyn asked quietly. I don't know. That doesn't scare you? Terrifies me. She smiled. Good. I'd hate to be the only one. Daniel reached for her hand. We'll figure it out, he said. One day at a time. One honest conversation at a time. One mistake at a time. Evelyn leaned into him. Outside, Boston stretched endlessly under the summer sun, golden and new, and waiting. Inside, two people sat in the quiet morning light. Not perfect, not certain, just real. Neither of them had been looking.